So today we're going to do something a little bit different. So some of you may know that I'm a ham radio operator. You may have seen it in some of my videos, and occasionally I give presentations at local radio clubs. So I have a number of PowerPoint presentations, and today I'm going to publish one of these on the subject of lithium batteries. In the spirit of off-grid, we need good power storage, and using lead-acid batteries is just a little too outdated for me. So maybe you find this information useful. So I'm gonna leave a few links in the description where to get some of these components, and check it out. Enjoy. This presentation is about lithium batteries and their use for off-grid application and communication. Here's the agenda. We will cover why lithium batteries, types of lithium batteries, assembling lithium batteries, charging lithium batteries, and practical application for off-grid use in ham radio communication. So why lithium batteries? Lithium batteries are lighter weight. They are about 1/3 of the weight of lead-acid batteries, giving the same capacity. Lithium has a very flat discharge curve. They have no memory effect. They have very high energy density. They are completely maintenance free. Lithium has a very high cycle count of 3000 plus compared to 1700 for lead acid battery if you only discharge it down to 50%. 80 to 100% usable capacity on lithium versus 50% on lead acid. Charge discharge efficiency is 99%, which is excellent for opportunity charge like solar charge. 70% for lead acid in comparison. And lithium is cheaper than lead acid, giving the capacity. And currently in 2022, in January of 2022, it's about $100 per kilowatt hour. So some of you will ask, will it blow up on me? And if you're using lithium polymer batteries, which is a very old technology, and it's actually fairly dangerous, and you've heard about those hoverboards blowing up and catching on fire and that kind of stuff. So those are all lithium polymer batteries. And this particular battery that I'm showing right here is from my racing drone, and it has 12.6 volts nominal voltage. So it's a 3S. It has 2.2 amp hours. It has a continuous discharge rating of 79 amps. And it has a burst discharge of 158 amps. So you think this thing is going to get hot? You bet. So stay away from lithium polymer batteries. It's an older technology. For us ham radio operators, we need something safer, easier to manage. So there are many different chemistries within the lithium chemistry of batteries here. So today we will focus on newer and safer types. So let's look at some of those lithium ion battery types. The first one in red is a lithium polymer. That's the one I just talked about. It has a nominal voltage of 3.65 volts. It's a older style, and it's a possible fire hazard, so I would recommend staying away from it. The second one is lithium cobalt oxide battery. This was used in earlier Tesla Model S and Tesla Model 3 vehicles. You know, very good chemistry, very stable. 3.65 volts nominal voltage. Those are these 18650 cells that many of you may know, and also the 25650 type. And they're used in power tools. If you have a wireless power tool or a cordless power tool, you know, that's what's used in those. These batteries are not happy at max voltage. They are not happy above 4 volts. So if you keep those completely charged, they deplete fairly quickly. The third here is a lithium iron phosphate battery. And those are very happy at fully charged. So you can keep those fully charged all day long. They have a nominal voltage of 3.2, so slightly less. And some of them have, most of them actually have restrictions that they cannot be charged below freezing. So this is something you may not want to use in an off-grid situation where your battery goes below freezing, or you have to put a battery management system in, a BMS, that monitors the temperature and keeps it from charging. The fourth item here is actually one I use in my off-grid cabin. It's a lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide battery. It has 3.65 nominal voltage, and mine are harvested out of a Chevy Volt. Nissan Leaf also has some of those in it. Those are fairly large cells. They have very high discharge rate, and those you can charge below freezing. The last one on my list here is a lithium titanate battery. Those are great batteries, but the nominal voltage is 2.3 volts. They have very fast charge rates and a very, very high cycle count. Some of these have a cycle count of 20,000 charge and discharge cycles. They do have lower energy density, and then they are a little bit heavier, but great battery. All of these are lithium batteries. Whenever we talk lithium batteries, we talk one cell only, and if a nominal voltage is 3.6 volts, there's not a whole lot you can do with it. So you can hook it up in series or in parallel. And most of us will hook it up in series, either 3S or 4S, to get the voltage up. And you can see on the left-hand side what that means. So this is an example of, let's say, AA batteries, and each has 1.5 volts on the left-hand side. So you hook the positive to the negative, and then that turns it into 3 volts. And on the right hand side, it's a parallel approach where you keep the voltage but you increase the capacity. And in most of our builds with lithium batteries, you actually do both. You hook them in series until you get your voltage, and then you link them in parallel until you get the capacity you want. So here's another way of looking at it. On the left-hand side, you see these batteries, and if you connect all the positives and all the negatives, you keep your 1.5 volts, but the capacity increases, from 500 milliamps, to 1.5 amps in this case. And on the right-hand side, like the old flashlights we used to have, you stick them all in there, and it goes positive to negative, and positive to negative, and it goes 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.5, and you have 4.5 volts, so you can do a lot more with the higher voltage, but your capacity is still 500 milliamps. So I'm pretty sure most of you know this. So, but that's how it works. So let's look at the discharge comparison here, and you can see on the y-axis you have the battery voltage. And on the x-axis, you have the depth of discharge in percent. And let's just look at lead-acid batteries, because we all know lead-acid batteries, right? We have them in our cars, and maybe some of us use them. And you can see, fully charged lead-acid batteries. A lead-acid battery has 2 volts nominal per cell. So that's why you have 6 cells in your lead-acid battery in your car, if you drive a regular car, okay? So that's like, call that 13 volts fully charged. And then, it depletes rather quickly at 40% depth of discharge. You can see where that blue line is. You are just crossing the 12 volt mark. And lead-acid batteries, even deep cycle lead-acid batteries, are only designed to be discharged 40% and then fully charged again. So you can not use the full capacity without really damaging the battery. And I quoted earlier 1700 cycles of a lead-acid battery, and I've done this several times of 1700 cycles, only discharging them down to 40%. If you discharge a car battery all the way down to flat and you charge it up again, you may get 200 cycles out of it. That's it. It's dead after that. So compared to the lithium discharge curve, you can see we're looking at 13.5 volts plus, okay, on lithium ion in this case. And you can see you can discharge it all the way down to 80% depth of discharge, and you're still above 13 volts. And then at that point, it drops off. And depending on the chemistry, I do not recommend completely discharging lithium-ion batteries. It does shorten their cycle time or their life expectancy. And some chemistries, specifically lithium cobalt oxide batteries, they do not like to be charged above 4 volts per cell. So I only charge mine to about 80%, and then you can drag them down to about 20% remaining or 80% depth of discharge, and you can still get your full 3,000 cycles out of them. So very interesting here. So let's look at some of these lithium iron phosphate batteries. Those are great batteries for off-grid situations. You can keep them fully charged. They do not deplete at full charge. They do, however, have a limitation of not being able to be charged below freezing temperatures, because the electrolyte is not meant for it, and it does permanent damage to their capacity. So on the left-hand side, you can see a kit, and actually I own this kit. It's a Sinopoly kit. It's Sinopoly cells. All of them are made in China. Every single one of these batteries is made in China. So these Sinopoly cells are phenomenal cells. And the way they are sold, and you can buy them on Amazon and other places, they call them 12 volts and then 100 amp hours, and they come with a BMS. So you can buy these, and they are called prismatic cells because they are rectangular shaped. And you can get these with the bus bars and the hardware, and you can assemble it, and the BMS, the battery management system. And this particular one comes with a temperature sensor. So you can assemble an entire battery, call it 12 volts, 100 amp hours, and you can actually use, I would say, 80% of these 100 amp hours. So you can use 80 amp hours out of this battery. And you can do this 3,000 times. You can charge it and discharge it over and over again. I'm not going to compare it to a lead acid battery, because a comparable 100 amp hour lead acid battery, you can only utilize 40 amp hours, which is half of what this capacity is. So on the right hand side is another way, you can buy completely assembled batteries. Again, they come from China, so somebody in China puts them together. They put a BMS on it. They shrink wrap this thing, and it's pretty much the same price. So you can do it yourself. On the left, you can buy these prismatic cells, or you can buy the battery completely assembled on the right with a very little additional charge, and you can just hook it up right to your charge controller, and you can use it. So lithium iron phosphate is a pretty cool chemistry, and I highly recommend it for us ham radio operators. It is available as prismatic cells, the rectangular shape. The cell capacity can be up to 300 amp hours. I've seen them up, that high. Very convenient. They have threaded terminals, so it's just really easy to stack and to connect. Right now I have a price here of $250 per kilowatt hour, so they are somewhat expensive still, and most of them cannot be charged below freezing, so be careful there. Low temperature charge versions are available, and battery management system is required for every single lithium ion chemistry that's out there. Nominal voltage is 3.2 volts per cell, and they have a little higher self-discharge than other lithium-ion batteries, but it could cause balancing issues, with aging. But one of the huge advantages that lithium iron phosphate has is they are very happy at full charge. So you can keep those fully charged, without depleting their cycle time. So this is an example of a lithium iron phosphate battery that I built for a friend of mine. And he sent me these cells, and again, those are prismatic cells. So I configured them into a 4S 1P. So 4 in series, only 1 in parallel, right? So this battery has a nominal voltage of 12.8. These cells have a capacity of 60 amp hours. The BMS on the right hand side, you can see the red, black and red box right there. That's a 60 amp BMS, or battery management system. And the whole battery back in 2021 costs about $400. The BMS monitors every single cell voltage, and it turns the entire battery off if it goes below the preset lithium iron phosphate chemistry voltage, or if it charges above a certain voltage. So let's look at battery management systems, or BMS. Let's look at the schematic on the right, and you can see the circuit board. This is one of the BMSs that I've used quite a bit. And you can see at the bottom of the schematic, it has those 4 cells. In this case, it's a 4S configuration. And it measures every single cell voltage and keeps it within safe levels. So this particular BMS has balancing functionality, so it balances cells. It has a low voltage disconnect. If any one of these cells drops below the safe voltage, it turns the entire battery off. During the charging process, it has a high voltage disconnect. So if any one of these cells reaches a very high voltage that's unsafe, it again turns the entire battery off. It detects short circuit, and it has short circuit protection. It has reverse polarity protection. And some of these BMSs, not this one, but some of them have temperature sensors that are required, for instance, for lithium iron phosphate batteries that cannot be charged below freezing. So it prevents this battery from charging, to prevent damage. You have to look out for these BMSs. They need to match exactly the chemistry that you're using it for. So a lithium ion is also a lithium cobalt oxide chemistry, right? So that goes up to 4.2 volts per cell, is a different circuit board than a lithium iron phosphate circuit board, where that voltage is slightly lower. So pay attention to what kind of BMS you are getting to make sure your BMS matches your cells. Let's look at lithium cobalt oxide batteries. And many of you know these at 18650 cells. So these were used in earlier Tesla Model S's and Tesla Model 3s. Back then they used 4,000 or 5,000 of these 18650 cells, to get their EVs out. They are cylindrical, which has advantages. Okay, I'm not getting into it right now. Or they are pouch cells. You can see those in Ring, doorbell batteries, that kind of stuff. They have a nominal voltage of 3.6 volts. The upper voltage on these is 4.2 volts, and they do not like to be above 4 volts. So don't keep your stuff all the way charged. If it's lithium cobalt oxide, it really shortens their life cycle. This particular cell capacity is up to about 3 amps. Recycled cells are available, and you can buy those for about $80 per kilowatt hour. A battery management system, or BMS, is required. And like I mentioned, the cells don't really like to be above 4 volts or 4.1 volts. These cells are also used in power tools and laptops and cordless drills and all that kind of stuff. You can buy these for about $3 for new cells. And I buy a lot of these used or recycled for about 70 cents. And again, it's January of 2022. So what can we do with these lithium cobalt oxide batteries? And you can see here, I'm giving you an example of a 4S5P configuration, which means 4 cells in series and 5 in parallel. So this battery pack has 14.4 volts nominal, and it's rated at 13 amp hours. So on the left hand side, you can see, before I shrink wrapped it, how I soldered these cells together. Those are brand new cells. And this particular one has a 30 amp BMS on it. And back in 2021, I paid $70 for this. So $70 for new cells And you can build one of these for about $37 for used cells. If you look at the left picture here and you look at the BMS, the circuit board, you notice a bunch of black wires going out to a combination plug on the right. Those are balancing leads. You don't need those. Okay, I put them on there because I wanted to monitor every single cell's voltage, and they are measuring devices you can plug in. Again, it was more of an educational piece, but you really don't need it. So on the right hand side, you can see it all shrink wrapped, and I wrote down 13 amp hours. And I use these batteries all the time for ham radio. I run my ICOM 7300 off of it because, I mean, this battery is rated, the BMS is rated for 30 amp discharge. So I can key up at 100 watts on digital on my 7300, and this battery doesn't even break a sweat. The only thing you need to worry about is really, if you charge it all the way, 4.2 volts per cell, you're looking at 16.8 volts fully charged. So here you can see different sizes of lithium cobalt oxide batteries, right? I mean, bigger is better. Look at the one on the far left. This is a 3S 1P. This was the second lithium battery I ever built. And it's 10.8 volts. It has 3 amp hours. It has a 10 amp BMS in it. And it cost me $15. I've used this battery for 2 years. And I'm using it for QRP, for CW on my Aircraft KX1 and KX3. And it's a great little battery, dirt cheap. The picture in the middle is one I built, again, bigger, 4S10P. So this is 14.4 volts, 27 amp hours. It has a 40 amp BMS on it, and it cost me about $75. So you can run for field day, for instance, your ICOM 7300 or 991 or whatever your radio is on HF. You can run this for several hours, either on sideband at 100 watts or on CW. You probably run it all day on CW if you put 40, 50 watts out there. And then on the far right, I never put this together. I just kind of lined them up. I mean, you can make these batteries as big as you want. And this is a 4S25P. So this would be 14.4 volts and would have 68 amp hours. It is no longer portable, really, because this thing becomes pretty heavy. And but you can build it as big as you like. So we all know bigger is better, right? So on the right hand side, you can see one of the batteries I built, and this is built out of Nissan Leaf cells. They were recycled out of a Nissan Leaf. And these are lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt oxide. And this is from the Nissan Leaf Generation 1. So this particular one is a 4S, 14.4 volts. And this is a 4 kilowatt hour battery pack. And I think the BMS is a 60 amp BMS on it. And I use it, for my station. It's way oversized for my station, but, I built it. So here it is. So here's a discharge curve for a lithium cobalt oxide battery. And you can see on the y-axis, it gives you the voltage. And on the x-axis, it gives you the state of charge. And again, you're starting out at about 4.2 volts fully charged, and again, they don't like to be up there. So I would recommend only charging them to about 4 volts. Keep it maybe 90% capacity, 80-90% capacity. But you can see that the flat discharge curve, you stay at above 3.75 volts until you hit about 20% capacity remaining, and then in the end it drops off. So very flat discharge curve, very good. So here's a comparison of two different chemistries, and I'm comparing the 4S or 4 in series chemistries here. So the first one is lithium iron phosphate, and you can see the ranges, the max charge, nominal, and minimum voltage. And just you know, for comparison. And you can see that the lithium iron phosphate is slightly lower. Let's just look at the green here. Let's just look at a 4S nominal voltage. So the voltages are pretty close to like lead acid stuff, right? I mean, 12.8 volts. We are very familiar with that. And then the lithium cobalt oxide chemistry is slightly higher at 14.4 volts nominal. And also to note, if you charge lithium cobalt oxide all the way, you are dealing with 16.8 volts. And depending on your radio you have, it may or may not like it. I can tell you I run my 7300 with 16 volts all the time, and it doesn't even care. So, but you may have an older radio that is a little more sensitive to, you know, just be aware of it. To me, there are three things to remember on lithium batteries. Just to simplify things, don't overcharge them. Know your chemistry, know what the upper limit is, put a battery management system circuit board on it, don't overcharge them. Do not discharge them below a minimum voltage. Okay, again, the BMS will shut off the entire battery if that's happening. And as far as charge and discharge current goes, you know, hang with about 1C or 1 times the capacity of the battery to maximize the life. And some cells have little higher voltage, but if you have a 20 amp hour battery, don't charge it at more than 20 amps and don't discharge it more than 20 amps. So that's what that means. 1C is 1 times the capacity should be your charge or discharge rate. If you follow those 3 rules, you'll be fine. So how do you charge lithium batteries? And in one sentence, you charge them constant current, constant voltage. Now, if we look at the graph on the right, it can be pretty confusing. Again, on the y-axis, you got a couple of things going on. You have a charge current in percent, and then you have, you know, the cell voltage. And on the x-axis, you got the time in hours, right? So, and most lithium batteries have a time limit of maybe 2 or 3 hours on it. So that's kind of, you know, built into a lot of these chargers. And if you just look at the red line, let's just look at the red line. So let's say you have a lithium battery that's completely depleted. So go on the very left of the chart, and you can see the voltage is like below 3 volts. So that's a red line. And you turn your charger on. And so your charger says like, hey, I'm gonna put all the current I can get into this battery. Boom. So your battery takes anything you throw at it. That's another thing about lithium batteries. They take any charge you throw at it. Again, I recommend not going over 1C charge or 1C discharge. So your charger is a blue line here. It says charging current percent. In blue, it says constant current. So this thing starts cranking out amps, right? And you can see your battery voltage, which is the red line, you know, went from 2.5 to 3.5, you know, and then after about 45 minutes, it's up above 4 volts. So this thing then starts charging and is pretty flat. And as soon as it's at 4.2 volts, it goes from constant current to constant voltage. So then the charger says like, oh, wait a minute, I cannot charge more than 4.2 volts per cell, so I got to reduce my current. And the charger, and you can see on the blue line at about 45 minutes, you know, starts dropping the current so that the voltage doesn't spike above 4.2 volts because, you know, they don't like that. And you go to the right, you know, 1 hour, you know, it keeps dropping and, you know, and the voltage stays the same. So this is your constant voltage. And the black dotted line is the charge capacity in percent. So very early on, you know, it jumps up and then it kind of takes longer, you know, for the voltage to come up, and the voltage stays the same and your charge percent is going to increase. And so here you are trucking along. And then, you know, the charger goes into float voltage at about 1.5 or 1 hour 45 minutes, and then at 2 hours again it keeps it at 4.2 volts, and the amperage drops more and more and more and more, And then, you know, the last hour really, nothing much happens there. You may get the last 5% of the battery capacity charged the last hour. So, but early on, a lot of charges going in the midsection, a lot of things are happening. And at the very end, it's just a pretty tedious process just to get the voltage up. And again, don't keep those batteries fully charged. If it's lithium cobalt oxide, you know, it really shortens the lifespan. So a few ways you can charge these batteries, and I have a couple slides here, and they are pretty much all the same except for the picture on the left. So let's start on the right hand side. So you got all kinds of different batteries: lithium cobalt oxide, lithium iron phosphate. You either bought them or you built them, you know, whatever it is. And in the middle, in this particular case, you have a solar charge controller, which this one is made by Victron. I use several of these. They are very high quality, and you can configure them to any battery chemistry you like. And on the left hand side, in this case, like my ham radio station is solar charged, so I have a solar panel on there. I have a full-size solar panel on there, so opportunity charge, the sun is shining, stuff charges, and it puts it into the battery. So pretty straightforward. Let's look at some other examples here. So what if you don't have a solar panel? And again, this slide is exactly like the previous slide on the left-hand side. The only difference is it's like, okay, maybe I don't have a solar panel. Maybe it's covered in snow, and maybe I need to charge my batteries without solar panel or solar energy. And you can put any energy source into it. In this case, I'm showing an old laptop battery power supply. Any one of these will work. And instead of a solar panel, you go right into the solar charge controller, the Victron charge controller here, and you can charge your batteries. You know, the charge controller doesn't know where the electrons are coming from. So I do that in the wintertime if I ever have to, like field day, winter field day. If I'm depleting my batteries, you know, below a certain level, I plug in an old laptop battery charger and get them back up. So this slide is slightly different, and in case of the Victron charge controller in the middle, I have a buck converter in here. And this particular buck converter is a 20 amp buck converter. The little power supply on the left is, I don't know, it might be 6-7 amps, something like that. So this buck converter can handle it. Now the reason I'm using a buck converter, because I can turn it to 4 volts per cell, right? And if I'm charging a 4S battery pack, 4, 8, 12, 16, so I can limit the buck controller to 16 volts, and it'll not overcharge my battery. It works just fine. Now, instead of using a solar panel or a power supply, of course, I can also charge from another battery. And I can limit my voltage to 16 volts in this case on the lithium cobalt oxide, or maybe 14.5 volts on the lithium iron phosphate at the bottom right. And I can charge from a battery to a battery. Works just fine. Yeah, this is my off-grid electrical setup, and some of you may have seen it in previous videos. And you can see on the left-hand side is the lithium battery that I built out of recycled Chevy Volt cells. Going to the right, the square blue box is the solar charge controller. And on the far right, you can see a 500 watt inverter. Both components are made by Victron, and I'm gonna leave some links in the description for you to check out. And you can build your own battery fairly cheaply compared to, you know, buying a battery completely built. And again, I'm gonna leave a link in the description and to a recycler. There are recyclers out there who recycle these and, you know, sell them off. The only thing is, you gotta be lucky and quick to buy these batteries, because, you know, they only have limited amounts available. They come in skids, and, you know, they sell out, you know, fairly quickly. So let's look at some ham radio applications here. And you can see this is my old trusted 4S5P battery pack on the right hand side, and I'm running it with a 440 you know, ham radio, or you can do 2 meters or 440. So this is the 13 amp hour capacity battery, and I can run my UHF, VHF rig for about 1 to 2 days, depending on how much you use it. You know, you can do the math on it. If you're running a net, you know, you deplete it faster, but if you're just casually talking, you know, this thing lasts me for 1 or 2 days. So this is my Aircraft KX1. It's a QRP CW rig, and on 40 meters it's only putting out 2.1 watts. And you can see my tiny little 3S1P battery. Fully charged, it's putting out 12.6 volts. It's 3 amp hours though, so that's quite good. So I can operate on CW for about 15 hours. Same concept here, same battery, a 3S1P, so 12.6 volts, 3 amp hours. And this is a mountain topper. It's a 4-band radio, CW only. Of course, you can see I'm on 30 meters right now. And you can operate for about 15 hours on this. Another example here, this is my KX3 Aircraft. And same battery again, 3 amp hour battery, 12.6 volts. So I can operate about 10 hours on CW or 15 hours of, you know, just listening. So this is one of our rapid deployment setups here. And we go to state parks and we set up a station in 10 minutes or less with a vertical antenna, usually ICOM 7300 and, you know, one of these batteries. And you can see my trusted 4S5P battery here at 14.4 volts nominal, 13 amp hours. And we can operate for about 3 hours on sideband at 100 watts. Now, of course, it depends on how much you transmit, but usually we spend about 3 hours at the park and make a few contacts, including DX contacts into Europe from the United States with a vertical Eurocom X80 antenna. And these batteries work very, very well. Here you can see a winter field day setup. On the left-hand side, you can see my Jeep, which is parked on a tripod, and this tripod goes into an S9. I think it's an S9V34 antenna. It's a multi-band antenna, 34 feet tall. It's a 43-foot element, actually, or wire. And I believe I'm running it into a 4-to-1 Annen. But anyway, we are talking batteries here. So this thing runs, again, the same battery setup, 13 amp hours, 14.4 volts, you know, about 2 hours on sideband, 100 watts, winter field day, no problem. Yeah, and of course you can charge all your stuff, right? I mean, we have Anderson connectors on everything, usually 30 amp Andersons on stuff, and you can see the battery in the middle there. It's actually everything is sitting on a solar panel, and the battery goes into an Anderson distribution block, and then from there it goes into a cheap inverter. I do not recommend those inverters, but you can use them in a pinch if you want to charge your HT. And of course, you can charge your iPhone with a 5-volt USB circuit board there. So yeah, you guys probably know how to do all this. So hopefully you enjoyed this presentation and it wasn't too long for you. And maybe I see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.